Taming the High Cost of College, Episode 71.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have Sharise Kent. We have a great interview about internships. I think internships, along with study abroad and other programs that are a little bit more extracurricular, are great avenues for students to set themselves apart and learn more about their career paths and get real-world experience so that they have a shot at getting their first job out of college. I think there's a lot of great benefits to internships, and we're going to talk about that with Sharise in just a minute. Before I jump into that episode, I want to remind everybody that we have show notes available at tamingthehighcostofcollege/71, where we have links to all the resources that we talk about in this particular episode. And we do mention a couple episodes, or I guess I want to mention a couple of episodes as well. We've got episode number 25 with Niall Nickel. And that's an episode about LinkedIn and how to use LinkedIn as a college student and also as a high school student. So if you're haven't listened to that one, that's a great thing for you and your student to understand and get involved in. And I also have a great interview with Kat Klaus, episode 66. And she has a great book on making the most of college. And it's stuff that you would read and implement starting in high school all through your college career. So I recommend both of those episodes, as well as Kat's book, as a great way for families to kind of buckle down and really understand some of the stuff that they need to be doing in addition to the typical college career. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the interview with Sharise, and let's talk about internships. All right, today we're sitting down with Sharise Kent. She is a college success and internship expert. Welcome, Sharise.
Hi, Brad. Thank you for having me.
All right. So you quite literally wrote the book on internships. Can you tell us just briefly a little bit about the book, and then we'll talk a little bit about your history as well?
Okay. Well, the internship manual, a step-by-step guide to getting the internship of your dreams, is really something that I wrote because all too often college students and their families hear that they should do internships, but nobody ever really takes a step back to explain why they should do internships, how to go about finding them, and what to do when you actually get an internship. So those are really the things that I go through in this book, is helping students to understand the importance of it, how to be an effective intern, how to do a resume, what to expect on interviews, and how to be a rock star intern to potentially take that internship and turn into a full-time job offer. So it's the manual. It's walking you from A to Z and giving you what you need to understand that process.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself then. How did you get involved in internships, and what's your history a little?
Well, Brad, I started as a college admissions professional. I spent the majority of my career working in college admissions. I worked at schools in New York as well as Maryland, where I live now. I worked for a university in Denver. So I've had a great career working for both nonprofit, for-profit, private, state institutions of varying sizes from 2,000 on up to 10,000. So that really set the foundation and really got me involved in wanting to be sure that there's information given to students that can help them make the right choice for where they best fit. And after some time doing that, I transitioned into working for a nonprofit program where I became the senior manager for an internship program. I still wanted to help students. I still wanted to help families, but I wanted to do it in a slightly different way. And so I moved from helping high school students understand how to get into college to helping college students understand how to do college successfully and integrate internships into that program. And so for the latter part of my career, I spent, the last 5 years or so managing a national internship program where I place students with companies like ESPN and HBO and Showtime and all of these fun companies, but at the same time also helping students develop and understand professional development skills, how to write resumes, how to interview, and just how to transition into the working professional world. So that led me to the point of taking all of that knowledge as both an admissions professional and, managing the national internship program, and I decided to put it into a book.
Oh, wow. Sounds great. So let's start at the beginning then for people that aren't as familiar. what is an internship as compared to a summer job or a while I'm in college kind of job? What would be the difference?
Well, the main difference between an internship is the opportunity to really learn. Internships are supposed to be learning experiences, not just part time jobs. A good internship is going to be an opportunity for you to be mentored, an opportunity for you to learn new skills, an opportunity for you to expand your network, an opportunity for you to really explore a career for anywhere from 8 weeks to 12 weeks. So, a summer job, when I think about the things that I did while I was a student, I worked at a movie theater, which to this point is still probably my favorite job. I had it for like 3 years, but I worked at movie theaters. I worked at a rec center, different things to make money. But my internship experiences tended to be more professional. They tended to require me to be in an office. They tended to require me to just learn how to function within an office environment that had bigger goals, be it working on public relations campaigns or be it learning how to market. Now, some internships for a student who's interested in, turf management may not be office based, but the fundamental rules of an internship is that it is an experience that will enhance your education and that will allow you to explore the different aspects of what's going to make you a great professional in that particular area. So it's a training environment rather than just going to work for a paycheck.
Absolutely. Okay. So if we're looking for colleges, let's back this up and say that let's say we have kids that are in high school now.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I see a lot is some colleges, do a good job with helping their students with internships and therefore they showcase it.
Hmm.
And then other colleges perhaps, don't have a focus on that. So they just kind of ignore the topic. Do you think
Hmm.
internship research is part of the process when you look for a college?
I think when you look for a college, you want to investigate the career services department as a whole, not just from an internship perspective, but whether or not they bring employers to campus for interviews, whether or not they do different things like networking dinners, etiquette dinners, the opportunity for you to, get the chance to see employers on site for job interviews as well as internship interviews. Do they work with students? Do they do mock interviews? So I wouldn't limit it to just looking at the internship opportunities. I would look at the entire career services structure to see if it's really going to support your desire to do internships, but your desire to grow as a professional. Would I hinge my entire decision on where I go to school on that? No, but I do think it is something to be aware of and observant of. And some schools do a better job at it than others. I've had the opportunity to visit a lot of colleges across this country, from Ivy League to HBCUs to public to private, and work with a lot of career services offices. And it's just the fact that some do better than others. I would get resumes from students at times, and I would encourage them to go to their career services office, and then they would tell me that they did. And I'm looking at this resume like, okay, wow, all right, you're going to need a little bit more help here. So I've seen the evidence of some programs that don't necessarily support students and give them the best tools. But I would not attend an institution for that reason. So I wouldn't let it be a determining factor. But if you're looking for things to weight, it is a positive. I would put it as a check on the positive column to have a school where universities, or not universities, employers come to recruit. If you're at a school and you know that you want to be an engineer and they bring engineering companies there and they have career fairs on their campus, then that's a positive. But on the other side of that, again, you can be very proactive in your search without the support of your institution. Some of my internships I found through school. I did 8 when I was in college, by the way. I did 8 internships. Not all of them came through my school. I was just kind of a motivated individual who found some on my own, and I did not do all of them for credit. So even if you are at a school or you choose a school that's not necessarily strong in that area, you can still do internships successfully. But there are some schools. One of the schools I mentioned in my book, Cuca College, is a small private liberal arts college I worked for years ago, and they have a thing called field period. So between December and January, they have an extended break because they require all of their students to do field periods during that time. So by the time they graduate, they have these, 6 to 8 week experiences, which are they could be internships or study abroads or different things like that. SUNY Binghamton, I'm a SUNY grad, so I always stick up for those guys. But they also, the State University of New York system, they require study abroad and internships. So a lot of schools are moving towards that world of saying, yes, you need to do this before you graduate.
All right. Now, are internships more popular in certain career paths or majors? Or, because I know, as an example, in a lot of the medical fields, you actually have a year or a semester or something where you're out in the field and working in a doctor's office or in a hospital. and that's all you do, and you're not really taking classes anymore. And then, of course, there's things like student teaching. So can you talk about what majors maybe might lean towards it or away from it, or how does that, any thoughts there?
Yeah, and to your point, exactly. Student teaching is a requirement that teachers would have to do, but that's going to be different than an internship in the sense that your student teaching typically is going to replace your classwork. You're not in class. You're primarily student teaching and getting those required qualifications to be in the classroom to graduate. And so an education major may decide to work at an education related nonprofit as an internship in addition to doing their student teaching. You have certain professions like respiratory therapy or a lot of the medical related professions that require on hand work. And so social work is another example. You are required to do so many social work hours before you can, get your degree. So within certain professions, it is a requirement to enter into the profession that is it's integrated into your academic education. And so in those instances, depending on the career that you choose, primarily in the medical field, sometimes counseling again is a field that requires you to do practicums, is more the language than internships. Practicums within the counseling profession to enter into that. So there are certain fields that are going to make you do internships essentially to graduate, to qualify for any type of certification or to qualify to go into the workforce. But internships are a little bit different because they allow for more exploration and they can give you a little bit more choice and flexibility versus only being able to do it in a certain segment. So again, the education example, a student teacher, they have to student teach, but they don't have to do an internship at a nonprofit education related place, but they can have that option to add that to enhance their skill set beyond what the on the job training or the on the job skills that they're going to build through their internship.
So when do most students do their internships? Is it something they do later in their college career after they've quote unquote learned something in college, or do they start it right away? Or
Most students wait till their junior or senior year, and that's what I am on a mission to change, Brad. I want students to understand this when they are coming in that freshman year. I want their families to understand this that freshman year. Most students wait till their junior year, sometimes their senior year, and then they kind of wake up and go, oh, you know what? I think I should do an internship. And then they're scrambling around trying to figure out where they can get an internship from. So sometimes that's because some more competitive internships do require that a student be a junior or senior, because depending on what you're doing, the employer, they're investing their time working with you. They want to know that you can bring something to the table. So if you're a junior, you're going to have, and you're interning at a newspaper, for example, you're going to have a longer history. You're going to have more courses and a portfolio that you've developed at that point that as a freshman you wouldn't have. So certain internships that get more competitive will require you to have some experience. The program that I worked for took sophomores and above. And because of that reason, sometimes the foundational freshman courses weren't there. But I started interning as a freshman, and I know other programs that accept freshmen. And the movement is actually that many companies are accepting high schoolers, So it's no longer this thing that's reserved for that junior or that senior. And I think the culture is shifting and changing because employers are recognizing that if they can introduce young people to these particular types of careers as early as high school, well, they're going to introduce them to things that they would not have majored in or would not have pursued careers in. So although that's been the culture, I think it needs to happen as early as freshman year, and it can happen. It may not be the same internship you have as a senior, and it shouldn't be because you're going to acquire experiences. But I think it needs to happen that freshman year, because if you integrate this into your collegiate experience, it's going to shape your collegiate experience differently than it will than if you do it in your senior year only.
okay, so I guess you mentioned a few things in passing, so I want to kind of back up again. So one of the things you mentioned of it is for credit, and then I guess to go along with that, what about pay? How does a typical internship look as far as getting paid while you're working and or credit while you're working?
Well, in terms of credit, if you're going to do an internship for credit, that typically has to be approved by either your department or career services somewhere within your university. So if you're doing an academic internship, typically you can get 3 credits. It depends on if you're, on a tri-semester system or a semester system. But for the most part, you get 3 credits. And it would typically involve writing a paper and going with an approved company through your career services or your academic department, because they want to see the academic value, because you're going to get course credit. They want to know that what you learned on that internship is equivalent to what you would have learned in a classroom to get 3 credits worth. Sometimes it may be 1 or 2 credits, but that's something you have to check out with your institution. So going through your school, it can actually free you up a little bit. If you're used to taking 15 credit hours and you get an approved internship through your university, well, now you only have to take 12 credit hours in classwork, and it frees your schedule up a little bit to actually go forward and do an internship with a company for 3 credits. And typically your supervisor has to do some paperwork, and you will need to do a paper or some other project to show evidence of learning. Paid internships vary. You have some companies that will do stipends. You have some, it could be a few $100 a month. You have some companies that may not pay you, but will offer you, benefits in terms of paying for your transportation, like give you a Metro card or something like that in the DC area. And then you have your regular paid internships, anywhere from minimum wage up to $25 an hour. I mean, some interns have the opportunity and the capacity, especially when they get later into their careers, to make, 18, 20, $25 an hour. And so they can be very well compensated in certain fields, certain companies, and certain professions. Engineering internships are almost always paid. Computer related internships are almost always paid. The media industry, which I worked in when I managed the internship program, has shifted. And when I started in that internship program, most of them weren't paying. Now, almost all of the major companies like NBC Universal and Comcast, which is one now, CNN, Turner, most of all those guys pay anywhere from $8 to $12 an hour, sometimes more. So it's going to vary. And if you are a paid intern, typically you're treated like an employee, where you go to work, you get a time card, and you work 25 hours a week, and you get paid $12 an hour. You get a paycheck with taxes taken out. So it can run the gambit. But more companies, especially larger companies of late, have moved to paid internships because there was so much controversy with unpaid internships in industries like media and radio and fashion, where they were just kind of abusing young people and just bringing them in and working them to death, essentially.
Right. Okay. So when do internships typically happen? I guess in my mind, I was thinking that a lot of it happens in the summertime, but it could also be parallel with classes during a typical semester.
Exactly. And that's something that I cover, because most of the time you're going to intern in the summer because you're free. You're not, I interned during the summers and worked because I wasn't in school. And so most of the time you're going to have your internships between the middle of May for college students. It's going to be mid-May to up to late August. If you're on the West Coast out in California, those guys go a little bit later on the East Coast. You're going to stop around mid-August. You do have fall internships that typically are going to take place from September through early December. And then you have your spring internships, which typically will be late January through early May. The time to look for those summer internships is actually right now. Some programs have already closed. So students looking for that internship that are currently in school, some internships you've already missed the boat on, because the internship programs for the summer can start looking as early as November for the following summer. If you're looking for a summer internship, you definitely need to get in the game.
Right. Okay. So if I am looking for a summer internship, so let's say I just learned about this because we're listening to the podcast, and you say, all right, I think I'd like to do an internship instead of just going back to work at, retail or whatever. I used to work the cash register at, I don't know, Walgreens, let's say. An internship in my field or near my field would be more beneficial. So I'd like to pursue an internship. What are the first steps a student should take to find an internship? Do they start at the college? Do they start in a want ads? Where do you find internships?
Those are good places to start. And generally, I give a rundown of 5 quick ways. And they go in more depth on my website because I can't explain it all. But definitely starting by asking around, talking to your professors, talking to your department heads, talking to administrators, talking to anybody you know. And the way that a parent can support this is that if you work in a profession, or you are part of a religious organization or fraternity or sorority, your son or daughter may not have a huge network, but you have a network that you can potentially tap into as well. So it starts with asking around to those. Even adjunct professors very often work for other companies and looking for interns as well. So start with the campus community first, because it is familiar, and then work your way through parents, mentors, friends, and other professionals. Okay. From there, so I always say just make a list of 10 people that you know, professors, parents, friends, and start there. From there, visiting career services on campus, going to that career services office this spring. Typically, most universities hold a job or internship fair. If your university doesn't, try to see if there's another local university that will have a fair. But most of them will hold some type of job or internship fair on campus. You don't even have to go anywhere, and they're free. Okay, so find out where the career services office is. That's step one if you haven't been yet, and find out. Sometimes if you're at a university, you may have a career campus, you may have career services for your college if you're within a university system. And if you're at a college, you may just have one. So it's set up somewhat differently depending on where you are. Find the office, see when the next event is, get your resume ready, make an appointment, and go through the process with them. The third thing I say is don't ignore small businesses and nonprofits. Companies that have fewer than 500 employees, companies that have 10 employees, 20 employees, or nonprofit organizations, especially if you're early in your academic career, they are great places to go in and actually get internship experiences. One of my internships came because my mom sent me to make a donation to a not-for-profit women's shelter. And I walked in and I was just really impressed with what they were doing. And I just asked and said, hey, are you guys looking for a summer intern? And they said, sure. And they couldn't pay me. So I had a job and another internship, but I spent about 10 to 12 hours a week with them learning and doing different things like, doing press clippings and helping put together different articles. And so start with those. And I didn't do it for credit. I didn't do it for money, but it was an experience that was on my resume. So start with small businesses and nonprofit who maybe need your assistance. Online search sites like internships.com, Look Sharp, Find Spark, LinkedIn are great places to start internship searches. And then having managed a program, I'm a big proponent of internship programs, like the T. Howard Foundation that I worked for. You have others that students can reference, the Athena Collaborative for young women. So you can do searches online, the Washington Center Internship Program. I mean, these just come to mind, but you can also look for actual internship programs where they will potentially pair you with a company, and they have a much broader reach. So it's like, you're applying to the Washington Center Internship Program, you could end up working for one of the government agencies without applying to all of the agencies. And so those are just the 5 ways that I suggest that people start looking for an internship. And if you're doing all 5 of those diligently, you're going to find an internship.
All right. So if I'm interested in, I guess, helping my student, do they need to build the resume and do the formal interview and all that kind of stuff? I mean, do internships go down pretty much like a typical job interview?
They do. And that's the beauty of it, is because if you get to do 3 or 4 internships and they're especially each internship should be going up a level, So if you started off at a small not-for-profit, that's a little informal. Maybe by the time you're a senior, you're interning with Google, and it's a little bit more corporate in nature, right? The beauty of the internship process is that if you've done 2 or 3 internships, 4 or 5 would be even better. By the time you get around to starting to interview with companies, you've had a good practice. And so, yes, finding an internship is like finding a job. And so if you become effective at networking, you become effective at your internet search, you become effective at, asking around, you become effective at these different ways you find an internship. When you start to look for a job, you're going to tap into the same resources. But now your network is bigger because you can go back to each one of those internship managers and coordinators that you had and say, hey, I'm looking for a position and I enjoyed my time. Can you be a reference? So yes, you need to have a resume that is professionally done. That doesn't mean that you have to go spend $400. It may mean that you go to career services that will offer that service for free. If you don't think they're very good, then yes, hire a resume writer if your parents can afford it. You will want to do mock interviews through your career services office so that you can get some practice and feedback. You want to know what to wear on interviews. And those are things that I cover. Some interviews will happen in a restaurant over lunch. Some of them will be in a big boardroom. And so what to expect and how to approach that interview, what to wear, should you take off your nose ring and different things like that, the same way that you're going to approach it 4 years later when you graduate. So the resume is a definite piece, and every college student needs to have a LinkedIn profile.
Yes. Yeah. We actually have a great episode on LinkedIn where I interviewed a LinkedIn expert on how LinkedIn is an up and coming thing where most employers will be using LinkedIn, and certainly in recruiters and so forth. So yeah, if you're interested in that, I will, in the show notes, I'll put a link to the actual episode. But yeah, LinkedIn I think is important. What about costs for internships? Do you typically pay to become an intern, or that seems very scammy to me, kind of like paying for scholarships? But can you just speak to that a little bit?
There are some internship programs, like the one I worked for did have a fee. As a nonprofit, it helped defray some of the costs associated with just managing the program. The Washington Center internship program I mentioned, I think their internship program is like $45, but I think you get refunded if you're not selected. And so it is not uncommon. And when you're applying to an actual program, and again, these programs are nonprofit organizations, not for profits. That's a different structure that is a little different. But the nonprofit internship programs that are dedicated to helping students get internships have relationships with major companies. They may charge anywhere from $10 to $40 application fee, but beyond that, there would be no additional charges. And as a nonprofit, that's just to help to defray the cost. In terms of paying for an internship search service, I do not recommend it. I think it's a little overkill to pay for somebody to help find you an internship when you have the resources, if you are diligent in the steps that I give you, to find one on your own. So I wouldn't recommend paying somebody $200 or $300 or $400 to help you find an internship or put together a profile for that matter. I think you're paying university tuition, access what you have on campus first and foremost, even tapping into the alumni network. Sometimes they have alumni programs that compare you with internship opportunities. So I don't believe in paying for searches, but I do believe if you're going through a nonprofit internship program that has an application fee, that those are reputable situations, and what you get as a result of getting into those programs is phenomenal. I mean, many of them will pay for you to fly different places for internships and things like that. Now, if you find an internship on your own, there potentially are costs associated if it's not in your local home area. I live in the DC area. A lot of students want to come to the DC area to intern. Well, if you don't have a friend or a family member, it's going to cost you to live in DC for the summer. It's going to cost you to live in New York for the summer. It's going to cost you to live in LA for the summer. So when I say cost associated, it's really not in terms of applying to the internship, but thinking about, yes, my junior year, I so want to intern with Viacom in New York. Okay, well, you know what? Your freshman year, mom and dad need to start saving money. You need to start saving money, because although this internship may be paid, you may or may not be able to pay the additional money to live in New York for the summer. And so I used to recommend that students stay at NYU or one of the campuses, but that can cost you between $2,000 and $4,000. And much like your tuition bill, it's due. It's not like, okay, I'll pay you $20 a week, So costs associated that parents should consider would be whether or not they're going to do an internship away from home. Then those are the major costs. And if you're doing one away from home, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get transportation when you are there if you're out in LA? So I encourage students and families to not be afraid to apply to internships that are in LA, New York, Atlanta, DC, Nashville. Go for it, but just factor in how you're going to manage that 8 to 12 weeks living away and getting to and from work. And also a parent should consider that if you're used to your child working 40 hours a week in the summer and they opt to do an internship that pays less or maybe unpaid for 10 or 15, there's going to be a bit of a financial hit, but that they can still work, but they may not be able to work as many paid hours, and just respecting that what they're doing is building on their future.
Right. All right. So I think we've covered the internship topic pretty well here. I guess before I let you go, is there anything else that you think you need to add? And otherwise, we can talk a little bit about the book as well.
I think just helping students and families understand that everybody who graduates college is going to have a degree, right? So you go to college, you get a degree. All right. So you're up against another student, another recent graduate who also went to a good college, who also was involved in activities, who also has a nice 3.0 GPA. Why should that employer hire you over the other person? Very often, it comes down to experience, and that's what internships do. And it's proven that interns make about $15,000 more per year than students who don't do internships. So it's an opportunity for you to put yourself ahead, and career planning starts that freshman year. It doesn't start when you're graduating. Career planning starts when you are in high school and in college, because it opens up the opportunities for you to really get a sense of what direction you want to go in, so that you don't spend 5 or 6 or 7 years in college. And so I think internships are very vital to the academic planning process, because it gets you out of the classroom and gives you a true expectation of what you can expect in the workforce, and gives you a leg up when you graduate.
All right. So let's talk a little bit more about the book that we mentioned early on. So it's called The Internship Manual. Mm-hmm. And can you give our listeners a little bit of a taste of what you're going to learn with that book?
Well, they're going to learn the basics from A to Z. I've taken a lot of my personal experiences. As I mentioned, I did 8 internships. And so I took a lot of the experiences that I had and the methods that I used to find internships and kind of woven those stories into it. So the things that I talk about, I know they work because I did them, I experienced them. And then in addition to my own experiences, in a 5-year period, I oversaw the placement of of 400 interns, over 400 interns. And so some of their experiences are included as well as I help students and families understand, okay, this is how you can apply. I even include scripts on what to say if you're not sure, or maybe your family, maybe you don't have the connections and work in a professional environment, and you don't have somebody to say, okay, this is how you should address that person. I even give scripts to say, okay, this is what you will say when you call that person. This is what you will say when you get the receptionist. This is what you will say when you get there. I was a first generation college student and some very hardworking parents, but they didn't have a whole lot of connections. And so some of these things I learned through trial and error. And these are things that I helped my students with all the time. So I thought a lot about the things that students come to me with and really tried to put those things into the book, including, like I said, the interview process and just being prepared for that on what to wear and what to say.
Right. So parents should buy the book and put it on the coffee table when their students come home for Christmas break, and see if you can get them to read it. Of course, if it's required reading, we know that doesn't work. So,
No.
all right. Well, I appreciate it. If people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, how can they get more information or contact you?
They can go to my website, theinternshipmanual.com, just the name of the book, theinternshipmanual.com, where they can just read more blogs. I write a lot about different issues related to internships, resume searches, and resumes and those things. So they can visit theinternshipmanual.com. And if they have a question, they can reach out to me directly. My email address is info @sharissekent.com. And I will definitely, try to answer any questions that you have, or provide a resource that might be, what you need to get the questions answered that you have. High school students, it's not too early, I'm sorry, to start, getting this process and getting and understanding what they need to do. So you can find all that information on my website.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time and effort, and people hopefully will buy your book and learn a lot about it, because I think this is an important area that, as part of the college planning process, it needs to, you need to go beyond just getting a degree these days.
Mhm.
People need to realize that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it.
All right. That was a great interview with Sharise. Let's go ahead and wrap things up. As I was listening to Sharice's interview, I did think of one other podcast that is out there in the past, and it's episode number 28, which is we talk about a gap year with Holly Bull. So a gap year is the opportunity for a student to, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a year, but you could take a semester off, or you could take a year off, or even just a summer off, and do something that would advance your career or otherwise increase your odds of getting accepted somewhere or getting experience for your first job. But there's a lot of opportunities to travel or volunteer or do different things by taking some time off from going directly to college. And for some students, maybe it's not, again, taking a time off from college per se, but spending your summers doing things like volunteering or traveling or doing things that would increase your resume and make you a stronger candidate for jobs or other things. So there's a lot of great episodes that kind of dovetail in with the internships, and I just want to let you know that they exist. I would appreciate if you gave us reviews in iTunes and Stitcher and wherever else you are getting your podcast from. And as always, we invite you to send us feedback and questions at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. And you can reach me, Brad, at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com if you'd like to send me an email directly. That's all we have this week. Look forward to talking to you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldrige Wealth Management and Baldrige College Solutions. The Baldrige companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.